So what we're going to be doing now is taking what we've learned about slope and y-intercept and taking it a step further. So our central question is, how do you write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form given different pieces of information? Those pieces of information will include the two you need, the slope and the y-intercept. It's very simple. It'll include only one, maybe the slope, but not the y-intercept. It'll also include something like just the y-intercept and maybe a random other point. And then eventually, two random points on the line. And how can we graph that, and how can we write the equation of the line? Okay, so here's what we know. We know slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, we've talked about that so much. And in that, m is my slope, and b is my y-intercept. So if I wanted to go ahead and write the equation of a line, and I told you the slope and y-intercept, all you would have to do is put them in the correct spots. For example, and this is one that is in your notes, write the equation with slope -3 and y-intercept 0, 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our equation, okay, and this is just like the one that's on your notes, and we're going to think about which one goes where. So think about that for a second before we go over it. Okay, hopefully what you realized here is that the -3 is what goes in front of x. That's my slope. Remember, my slope goes in the m spot. If we go back up to the top part, my m is right there. My m is right there. And that's the part that tells me what my slope is. And so if I'm given a slope, that's where I would put it. My y-intercept is 6. So therefore on that part, I'm going to go ahead and use 6. Okay, so let's try a couple on our own. They're labeled 1 and 2 on your notes. So starting off with number 1, write the equation with slope 5 and y-intercept 0, -2. So pause the video, fill in the blanks on number 1, and see if you can write the equation of the line. Okay, so starting off with the equation, slope is 5, so it's going to go in the spot where slope goes, which is m, and y-intercept is -2, so it's going to go in the right side. All right, second example. Write the equation with slope 1/2 and y-intercept 0, 8. So go ahead, take a second, pause the video, hit play once you've written down the information and figured out the answer. Okay, so we start off with our slope, which is 1/2, and our y-intercept, which is 0, 8. So what if I only gave you half the information? So before I gave you slope and y-intercept, it's very easy just to plot those two into the correct spot. But what if I give you a problem like this? Write the equation of the line with slope 3 through the point 2, 3. Well, first of all, what I hope you would notice is this is not the y-intercept. The y-intercept will always have 0, something, okay? So that's not the y-intercept. I can't just take that 2 or that 3 and put it into the spot. It doesn't make sense. So what I can do, though, is I can start off with the information I know. What I do know for sure here is that the slope is 3. So that means my slope is going to be 3. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at two different ways to solve it. The first way you're going to learn is graphing. That's why in your notes you have graphing. Later on, you're going to end up doing the same problems, but you're going to do it in an algebraic way, which means we're going to use algebra by plugging in points and solving the equation. So first we're going to start off with graphical. So let's look at a graph. What do I know automatically? Well, I know that my rise over run is up 3 over 1 because my slope is 3. But I don't know where to go with that. I could easily just sort of say, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go up 3 over 1. All right, but is that the right spot, or is it supposed to be up 3 over 1 right there? Or is it supposed to be up 3 over 1 right there? I mean, unless I know where to start, how am I going to know where to draw my arrows and where to go ahead and count my rise over run? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to plot that point. That point I just plotted is the point off the graph, 2, 3. So take a second, plot that point on your graph paper. Remember to pause your video when you need to, because I will continue to move on, obviously. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to plot the next point. Now that I have a point, I can go ahead and plot my next using with the rise over run. You don't have to draw the arrows. The arrows are for your benefit, but you can if you'd like to on your notes. So take a second and do that. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to basically speed graph. What we're hoping to have happen is when I do my speed graphing, I'm going to look and see where the line hits the y-axis. I still want to graph every single point because that tells me if I'm graphing everything correctly. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to finish the speed graph. Okay, I do a second point like that, and I plot the rest of them. Notice on mine, I graphed the y-intercept in pink. All you're going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for that point where it hits the y-axis. Okay, so take a second and make sure you plot all this on there so you have good notes. All right, so now that that's done, all we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at our speed graph and look at the y-intercept. The y-intercept, of course, is right there at -3. Okay, so as a point, it is 0, -3, which means then my y-intercept is -3, and I can now complete my line. If you're more comfortable going ahead and writing it as, 3x minus 3, that's fine to go ahead and kind of cross off the plus sign. I don't mind that, but to not give it away, I put a plus sign in there. That way you have to think, is it positive or negative? All right, so moving on to the right side of your notes now, we're going to go ahead and try a couple. Because honestly, all there is to it is plotting that point and speed graphing. The biggest thing to be careful about is, did you do, the correct slope? Did you go up 1, right 2 instead of up 1, left 2? Was it supposed to be up 3 over 1, instead you went up 1 over 3? Those are the kinds of things that are going to mess you up on this, as well as maybe not knowing how to plot a point. But I don't think that is a huge issue for us. So you're going to have to fill in the blanks because I left it blank up there. So on your paper it says slope through empty point. So the slope is -4 through the point -1, 5. I just don't want to put all those words on your notes. So go ahead and try to follow that process. Remember, start off with your slope of -4, because you know that, and go ahead and try to speed graph to find the y-intercept. So pause the video while you do that, plot your first point, do rise over run, and then we'll go ahead and speed graph it from there. If you're not comfortable doing the whole thing all in one swoop, then what I'll do is I will go piece by piece as I go through the problem. Alright, so starting off here, you should have plotted your first point at -1, 5, which is right there. So if that's not right, pause the video, erase it, double check your work. Okay, second thing we're going to do is we're going to do the first point using our rise over run. Our rise over run is -4. Remember that we always have an over 1 underneath because we're talking about a whole number. There has to be a rise and a run. So that means I'm going to go up 4, and then I'm going to go left 1, and that's going to be my second point. So again, if this is incorrect, pause the video for a second, fix it, speed graph the rest of the way, because any piece of error there is going to mess up your whole answer. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat. We're going to go ahead and speed graph the rest of the way. Now I can't go up anymore, so now I'm going down and right to make a straight line, and drawing in my line. Okay, so now that you have that information, go ahead and write down what you think the y-intercept is, and I'll wait a second, and we can check if you're correct. Alright, so as you can see, it crosses the y-axis at the point 1 right there. So the y-intercept is 1. So that's all there is to it. We've now created our equation, and we can move on. Okay, try the next example. Again, you're going to have to fill in the blanks there. The slope is 1/2, and it's through the point 6, 7. Something that's about 1/2 is anytime you see a 1/2, an easy thing to remember is it really means divide by 2. It means cut in half. So you'll always see when you see those, usually like a 6 or an 8 or a 10, something that's even. So we're going to go ahead and start the problem. So from here, go ahead and do all the work. Figure out your slope that goes in the spot in front of x. You can graph the problem and speed graph it. Do whatever you can to get the problem completely done. If you don't feel comfortable, go piece by piece with me, and we'll pause it as we go. All right, so the slope is 1/2. We get that directly from the problem. Starting off with our first point, our first point is 6, 7, which is right there. Over 6, up 7. So positive if you need to fix that. All right, so now our slope is 1/2, which means I'm going to go up 1, and then I'm going to go right 2 because it's a positive 1/2. If that point's incorrect, pause it, go ahead and go from there. If not, you should be speed graphing the rest of the graph. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and plot the rest of our points. Again, I put green for mine when it crosses. You don't need to do that. Just pay attention where it crosses that y-axis. All right, so your line should look like that, and you should notice that your y-intercept crosses at 4. Again, this is the graphical method of doing it. The drawback is you don't always have graph paper, but I feel like most of the time you can kind of figure it out. If you think about 6, 7, you go down and over 2 each time. Well, when you go over 2, you're going to hit 4, then you're going to hit 2, then you're going to hit 0. So you could kind of do it 3 times and you get your answer. Okay, so the next one, we're in the bottom left now. The slope is -1/3 to the point -6, 0. Remember, -1/3 would be the same as cutting it into 3 pieces. So it's like dividing by -3 basically. So go ahead and do the problem from beginning to end, or as far as you can get, and we'll go over it piece by piece together. All right, so the slope is -1/3. We're going to go ahead and speed graph. So the first thing you should have done is you should have plotted the point -6, 0. -6, 0 is right on the x-axis. That's one that I would be worried about you guys making a mistake on. So please double check you got that right. A lot of times people would put that point on the y-axis, like right here, and you got to be careful not to do that. So if you got that incorrect, pause it for a second. If not, we'll go ahead and proceed from there in just a second by plotting our first point. All right, so our first point would have been up 1 and then left 3. Okay, so there you're going to speed graph the rest of the way and draw your line. So what you should have noticed here is that it crosses at -2, which means my answer is y equals -1/3 x plus -2, or y equals -1/3 x minus 2. And the last example we're going to try on the notes, we'll try plenty more in class, don't worry, is this one. Okay, so the slope is 2 and the point is -5, -3. So go ahead and fill that out and we'll begin. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to start off with our slope of 2. That goes right in there. And then we're going to go ahead and try to do our speed graph. So try to do it from beginning to end. This is the last example. See if you can do the whole thing if you haven't been able to yet. It's not too difficult if you kind of take your time and go step by step. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started here. So the first point you should have plotted would be -5, -3, 5 to the left, 3 down. Okay, next our slope is really 2/1, which means I'm going to go up 2 and right 1. Okay, remember that from there you're going to go ahead and repeat the process the whole rest of the way. So if you haven't done that yet, pause the video and do that. All right, so going from there, we're going to go ahead and continue. Again, speed graphing means you graph every point you possibly can and you draw a nice straight line. Okay, as you can see, the y-intercept crosses at 7, so your answer should be 2x plus 7. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to solve the same exact problems using algebra. The truth is, we like to give you lots of tools, so you can use either one. For practice, we're going to probably practice both of them, just so you guys can see, hey, I know how to solve it algebraically as well as I know how to solve it graphically, especially because graphically is kind of tough when you don't always have graph paper. But it is a very simple way, a very visual way. So we're going to look at the algebra of how to do it as well. So what you're going to notice is we're going to start with the same example we had before. Okay, and this is the first example we did on our graph. We already know the answer to this. Okay, we already know that the answer is -3. So let's see how algebraically we could get that answer. So we're going to start off very similar to the way we did before. And again, we're going to work through this one together. And this is the one that you see kind of like with all the text on your notes. It's the very top. So we're going to start off with what we know. What we know is the y-intercept is, or sorry, the slope is 3. Okay, and it's the same way we started the last problem. What we don't know in this case is we don't know our b. So what we have to do is we have to solve for b. The problem is you don't know how to solve equations when there's 3 different variables, x and y and b in there. That doesn't make any sense. We don't know how to solve that. What we need is only one variable, and then we could either have a 2-step equation or a 1-step equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to notice the fact that our point is x comma y. Every point is x comma y. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take that information and we're going to substitute in for our x and for our y right there using the point. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the x and the y from the point. So think for a second, what is my x and what is my y? Okay, well my x is 2 and my y is 3. Very common mistake here is for people to go ahead and put the 2 and the 3 because they're going in the same order as they are up there. But remember, this is x and this is y. So you have to make sure you put the correct ones in the correct places. That's really the hardest part of this, is making sure you set it up correctly. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to simplify anything that we can. There's not really much to simplify. So what we end up with is 6. 2 times 3 is 6 plus b. Okay, now from here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solve. It's a very simple 1-step equation. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. And that's going to give me b equals -3. Now my answer, that now, is my y-intercept. So I'm done. So as you can see, it's a couple of steps. It's a very simple, basically 2 steps if you count plugging in and then solving a 1-step equation. So either way will get you your answer. Some people are going to love the graphing one. Some people are going to want to prefer to do this method. What I'd like to see for my students is the ability to do both. So if you forget how to do the set it up part, or let's say you can't figure out the graph, you can go to the backup plan. Okay, and that's very important, really in life, that you have more than one way to get out of a problem. But especially so in math, that you have multiple tools to solve the same thing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use what we just did to kind of solve some of the other ones. It's going to be a very step-by-step process, just like the other one. These are the same problems that we did for the other one, so we already know the answers, and it's a very easy way to check your work, but we want to learn this method. So we're going to start off with what we know, okay, which is -4 goes here. So from there, I want you to go ahead and try to set up your equation, and then plug in your x and your y, and solve for b. So there's a lot of steps, so just go ahead and try to do as much as you can, and then we'll go step by step in a second. So pause the video while you do that. Alright, so starting off, we're going to start off with y equals -4x plus b. So if you have anything else, pause the video and fix it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to substitute in our x and our y. So take a second to do that, if you haven't already. Okay, so very careful here. We've got y is 5 and x is -1. So in case that's incorrect, pause it, fix it. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and simplify. So what we do here is we have 5 and then -1 times -4. Remember, I showed you guys the triangle. So when you're multiplying or dividing negatives, you make a little triangle like this. And what you do is you cover up the 2 things that you have. In this case, we have one -1 and a -4. The answer that's left over is the answer, the sign of the answer. So we end up with 5 equals 4 positive plus b. Last step, solve that 1-step equation. And you're going to end up with 1 equals b. Okay, lastly, that is our y-intercept. So that goes in our answer. And if you remember looking back, that's the same answer that we got before. So you can see 2 different ways to do the same thing. Okay, so next problem. Okay, we're going to write the equation in the line with slope 1/2 through the point 6, 7. So again, start with what you know. Set up your equation. Plug in your x and your y. Solve it. And then write your y-intercept. So there's a few different things to do. Pause the video, get as far as you can on your own. If you get stuck, let's kind of see where we're at. All right, so y-intercept we're going to find, but our slope is 1/2. We set it up with b because we don't know what b is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now and plug in our x and our y. Okay, so x is 6 and y is 7, so make sure they go in the correct places. Now you're going to go ahead and simplify. While you do this, remember 1/2 is the same as dividing by 2 or saying take half of it. So pause the video, make sure you figured that out. If you've already got it, you can just keep it going. All right, so half of 6 is 3. Okay, and last step is to solve that one-step equation. All right, so subtracting 3 from both sides, we end up with b equals 4. So my y-intercept up atop is 4. Okay, our third example to try on our own. Write the equation on the line with slope -1/3 through the point -6, 0. So do as much as you can. Remember that when we're multiplying by -1/3, it's the same as dividing by -3. And remember your triangle to determine the sign. Okay, so beginning here, our slope is -1/3, which means our equation is -1/3 x plus b. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and substitute in our x and our y, so pause the video while you do that, if you haven't already done it. Alright, so my x is -6 and my y is 0, making sure they're in the correct place. Remember, now we're going to simplify, and when we simplify, we're going to take -6 and divide it by -3. That's the trick there. That's going to give us a +2. Now go ahead and solve the one-step equation. And you're going to end up with -2 for b, which means my y-intercept is -2. Okay, so the next one we're going to do, we're going to write the equation on the line with slope 2 through the point -5, -3. So get as much as you can done. Hit play, and we'll go through the whole thing. Try to get the whole thing done again, because this is the last example before you try it on your own. Okay, so what we have here is a slope of 2, which means my equation is y equals 2x plus b. We're going to next plug in our x and our y. Okay, x is -5 and y is -3, making sure they're in the correct place. Again, -2 times -5, that's going to equal a -10. And solving the last step by adding 10 to both sides, I'm going to end up with 7 equals b, so I can finish my problem. Okay, so make sure your notes are complete. Everything should be filled in. There should be no blank spaces that are left over. If so, you need to go back and fix those in the video. Otherwise, make sure you fill out the form below, unless we're doing this in class today, and in which case you're going to have a little quiz afterwards to double check your work. So, whether it be on paper or with me. So, all right, and I'll see you next time.